Bill, good morning, man. Thanks for the time.
Anytime, guys. How are you?
Doing all right. All right, let's start with this weekend. LSU kind of was this past weekend. Kind of took the weekend off. I mean, there wasn't a lot of news coming out of Baton Rouge as far as recruiting is concerned. This upcoming weekend is going to be a different story, correct?
Yeah, they'll have all hands on deck this weekend. This past weekend, all they hosted was a Houston area prospect, 2020 Side Creek linebacker Josh White, who's pretty high on LSU after the visit. But this weekend, yeah, it'll be three major defensive line targets with Ishmael Sopsher out of A&E. They'll have Byron Young out of Mississippi on campus and Charles Moore out of Mississippi on campus as well. And then Christian Williams, an Alabama cornerback. And they'll have two signees with Kendall McCallum, the linebacker out of Alabama, and then Peter Parrish, the quarterback out of Alabama. And then they're bringing in Sanoe Fanua. I probably butchered that a little bit, but he's a junior college defensive end linebacker who's uncommitted. And then they're bringing in Garmin Randolph, an uncommitted 2019 tight end as well. So busy weekend for LSU.
Let's start with Byron Young. The news around Young leading up to signing day has been very positive around LSU. He's an Alabama commit. Where do the Tigers stand on him, and how good of a sign is that he's coming to Baton Rouge this weekend?
Well, it's a good sign that he's coming to LSU for his final weekend, and that goes for all of these guys that they're bringing in. But it's kind of this huge puzzle, this defensive line recruiting class, and how they're going to finish out between the trio and then the junior college defensive linemen, because Byron Young could say, okay, well, I really like Alabama. I'm going to stick with them. How does that affect Ishmael Sopsher? Ishmael Sopsher could already be in at Alabama. How does that affect Byron Young? How does that affect Charles Moore? But this is somebody that has been not necessarily trending to LSU, but there's been some positivity as of late once he decided that this was going to be his final official visit. And so they're going to get a chance to bring in his entire family. And this is somebody that has tried to visit LSU a couple times now, and for whatever reason, including a big state championship run for his high school team, just hadn't been able to make it in. So he'll be back in Baton Rouge. I will say the one thing with him is that Alabama just hired Mississippi State defensive line coach Brian Baker, and Byron Young was relatively close with him. So how does that affect things as well for Byron Young? It's all just kind of this crazy puzzle piece for defensive line especially.
So it is this giant interconnected puzzle. Has LSU's priority list changed in the last couple months at all? Like if you had to rank in terms of who they want the most, is like Sopsher still on top?
I gotta believe so, just because he's from Tangipahoa Parish, he's from A-Meet, he's in state. I don't know what exactly their board necessarily looks like in terms of who they really want. If it was me, I would really want Byron Young the most. I think he was outstanding at the All-American Bowl. He really showed up and proved that he's one of the elite defensive tackles in the country. And he is right down the road, in Mississippi. He's not far. It's not a recruit that, you're going out somewhere way out and going to get like Apu Ika in the early signing period. This is somebody that you can build off of in next cycle if you go and get him as well.
What are we hearing on Sopsher?
Man, it's been a lot of back and forth. I think confidence on our end in terms of where LSU stands is kind of wavered a little bit with Rodney Sopsher now officially in that 2020 class. LSU was prepared to take both of them if they were both going to be 2019 recruits, and so now it's a one for one deal. In terms of who gets a spot in a recruiting class. So LSU has to win that battle without taking Rodney Sopsher, and I just don't know if they're going to be able to do it. News out of Sopsher's official visit to Alabama this weekend was that he is torn and he is trying to figure out what he wants to do, and he could say, I'm going to stay close to home, but I think right now things are kind of looking like it's more like Alabama for Sopsher.
It smells like a Saban deal around Rodney. Is that Alabama? Is that Nick Saban doing that?
Oh, I don't necessarily know about that. I mean, we were told he was taking 18 hours to try and beat 2019 and sign with his brother and do all those things. It just doesn't end up, happening. So I don't necessarily, I don't go that far into the recruiting conspiracy side of what Nick Saban can control, although he does it fairly well, I would say. But Sopsher is one where you kind of hear this, okay, well, he's torn and that's coming off of the Alabama visit. Is that something to kind of take some pressure off of him as an in-state kid? Now that I can see a little bit more of.
Talking to Billy Embody here on Off the Bench, 104.5, 100.3, 94.7 ESPN. Billy, do you feel comfortable calling your shot a week out here if I were to ask you for crystal ball predictions? Not saying they have to be right, but just where you think LSU probably ends up with these final spots.
The defensive line class, I don't think any of us are really comfortable at this point, but I'll take a shot for sure. I've got a couple for you.
Okay.
All right, so I think, and Shea Dixon and I just put our picks in yesterday for LSU to land Christian Williams. He's out of Daphne, Alabama. He's a 6'1", 180-pound corner who's committed to Alabama. He's got some size. He could theoretically play a little safety, but they like him at corner. And so he's coming to LSU this weekend. We like him to flip to LSU here, sometime, I guess, either on National Signing Day or before National Signing Day after this visit. And then we've had picks in for Devonta Lee out of A-Meet for a long time. We feel really good about those. He's canceled his Texas A&M visit. He didn't take an unofficial visit back up to Kentucky with his quarterback who's committed there. So everything looks, in decent shape for LSU to land Devonta Lee out of A-Meet. One interesting thing to watch will be how LSU handles Ray Parker, who's committed to LSU, at least, publicly right now, out of Ruston, Louisiana. He's a tight end, offensive tackle, projected kind of deal. They're bringing in Garmin Randolph, who's got good size, 6'6", 230, and he's got offers from all over. How did they handle that? Because I feel like if they press for Garmin Randolph, they could probably get him. But do they stick with the in-state kid in Ray Parker? That'll be something to watch. So I'm not necessarily going with a prediction either way because that can go right up until signing day. But those are two that I think one of the two they probably get in the class. And then I think Maurice Hampton's going to sign with LSU. He'll be good. So that's four right there. If I get my math correct. And then I think they just get one of these three defensive linemen. They just kind of figure it out.
So, Billy, if they get Christian Williams and Byron Young in this class, that'll be two Alabama flips. How big would that be for the perception of LSU, Bama in the winter and the springtime compared to what's happened in the fall?
Well, and even it's on a flip, but even getting Lee in that situation, right, you're still winning a direct battle with Bama.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. I mean, I think with Lee, that's somebody that Bama, hasn't really necessarily pressed as much, but in terms of earlier this year, even Devonta Lee was, there was a ton of smoke that he was going to commit to LSU before the season. So that's one that they've been in good shape with for a while. But in terms of perception, yeah, that'll be huge if they can somehow get it done with Christian Williams and Byron Young. But you also know that there will be plenty of LSU fans screaming at the top of their lungs about Ishmael Sopsher if he goes elsewhere. Billy
Embody will be covering his work over the next week. It should be crazy 1 week from tomorrow, National Signing Day. If you want the latest on what's happening with college football recruiting, get over to Go247, centering around what's happening with the LSU Tigers. Billy Embody, Shea Dixon, and that crew over there, regular contributors here on ESPN Baton Rouge. Thanks, Bill.
Anytime, guys.
All right, Billy,
there
take
he
it
is,
easy, man.
Billy Embody checking in. We'll close that hour one now.